All right. All right. And a good day, everyone. And welcome to today's session of Truly Foundation and A Course in Miracles. And I am your host, and I am delighted to be here as a temporary guide, teacher, pointer to temporarily guide and teach and point you within, point you to that which is permanent, to point you to that which is the truth that is true always. And so, as any good teacher would have as its goal, is that the teacher becomes what? Unnecessary, but that the student would embrace the teachings and make them their very own. And so that is the goal here at Truly Foundation, not that you become permanently attached and dependent upon a teacher, which I think is a huge mistake that we make in many environments where there's a teacher-student relationship. But that the goal is to have the student to discover their permanent teacher that is one with each of us. The voice that speaks for truth, the voice that speaks for God. And that voice is our very own self, because we are a part of all the infinite intelligence that there is. Why? Because we are a part of God. And so God is a part of our very essence, of our very nature. God is a part of our mind. There's a part of our mind where there's always this direct flow of revelation that comes directly from source, from creator to creation, from Father to Son. That has always been available to us since the very day that we incarnated on this earthly plane. But the noise of this world, the extreme noise of this world, and all of the things in this world that vie for our attention has somehow won out and caused us to completely turn away from our true self, to completely put a veil or a mask or a block between us and our true self. And all we've been hearing and all we've been conditioned by is the thought system of this world. But here at Truly Foundation, our purpose is to point you to within, to redirect your focus and your attention and your intention to the reality of your infinite eternal self, so that we regain our desire to know thyself. And in stillness and in quietness, we begin to hear that voice that speaks for truth concerning us. And so any really good teacher, any really good mentor, coach will always have a model for us to follow, a practice for us to follow, an example for us to follow. And since it is widely acceptable that the man Jesus Christ and his life is the most consistent example of truth and love, is the most consistent example of one that had a self-image of himself that was totally and completely in alignment with his creator, that one that operated through a mind. He called it the mind of Christ, a mind that was totally in sync and harmony with the thoughts of God. That's why the writer encouraged us to let that mind that was operating in Jesus, the man, he said, let that mind be in you and in me that was also in him, being in the form of God. Where this idea of two becoming one, where the man Christ and the God Christ became one entity. There was an integration in his humanity and his divinity. This is our model. This is our example. This is the path to our joy and peace and happiness and fulfillment and commitment and completeness. And it's widely accepted that this spiritual document that we're using, called A Course in Miracles, that the thoughts, the ideas, this whole course that was written and downloaded to humanity based on the lived experience of the man Jesus. And so we have our model. I can't think of a better model to help us to learn and to expand our awareness and to get to a place where we experience our true self. And so today we're going to be looking at Workbook Lesson 246. Workbook Lesson 246 out of A Course in Miracles. And the thought for today and the practice for today is this: to love my Father, to love my Creator, to love my source, is to love his Son. Son here represents God's creation. We all are a part of God's creation. So we can read it this way: to love our Father is to love our Father's creation, which is us. All of God's creation, with no exception. Jesus used the word neighbor when he wanted to describe what this creation reality looked like on this earthly plane. He said to love God and to love your neighbor. Other words, to love humanity. And that was an all-inclusive, all-encompassing idea that he was sharing, that, that God and his creation are one. They are not separate. So you can't love one and hate the other. You can't have two masters. You can't have two ideas. You can't be double-minded. There has to be a surety and a certainty about reality and about truth. And that's one of the goals that we are setting here as we go through these workbook lessons and this 365 days of transformation and renewing of our mind. So Jesus said, let this mind be in you that was in me, which is all about love. And then he said that in Philippians 2, 5, and 6, he said, in this mind that is the Christ mind, it's not split. It doesn't love one and hate another. It's not divided. It accepts no labels of this world, but it is pure. It's just as pure as God created his creation, which is us. It is just as innocent. It's just as whole. It is complete as it was from the very beginning. It has not changed. It's an inalterable. It is an unchanging reality, that which God created, which includes you and me. He said, well, with this mind, while you're here in this earth plane, in this incarnated awareness, he said, never think that you are taking anything away from your creator or your father. By embracing the reality of your equality with your creator and with all of creation. He said, think it not robbery to be equal with God. Why? Because in love, God is love, and in love there is only equality. Not only do you have equality with God, but you have equality with all God's creation. That means that you have equality with humanity. All humanity have equality. That is what we truly desire in our heart, to have the experience of equality. Well, you can have that experience now in this very moment, in this holy instant, just through shifting your perception and embracing the mind of Christ, which is equality with your Father and with his creation. Equality with your Father and your neighbor. Equality with your Father, because you and your Father and your neighbor are all one and the same. This is the shift that we must make in our thinking and our perception. Otherwise, we're still holding on to an ego thought system of separation and division, which promotes sin consciousness, fear, and guilt. So if we are experiencing sin consciousness, fear, and guilt, or guilt and fear, it's coming from our thinking. It's coming from our believing, our thought system, that number one, we're separate and that there's inequality. Jesus came with the message of oneness and equality. That's why he said, I and the Father are one. That's why he said, when you've seen me, you have seen the Father. And what other example is out here in the world that consistently demonstrates and echoes this message of oneness and equality than our elder brother, Jesus? As a man, he did this as a man. Now here we are in 2022. It is our turn as an incarnate creature, as an incarnate man or manhood. Even the gender don't even matter here. We're not talking about genders, males or females. We're talking about the fact that we find ourselves associated with an incarnate body as a man. And we're on this journey and we need help. And Jesus is our example. I can't think of a better one. So before we get into this lesson on love, to love God and to love our neighbor, I want to turn quickly to chapter 6 in the text of A Course in Miracles. And this chapter title is called The Lesson of Love. Really, this being transformed by the by the renewing of our mind, basically it is a lesson of love. Why? Because love is all there is. God is all there is. And we need to learn or relearn or be reminded that we share in this one love. That our true identity, our true reality, our true self, the I that we are, the I am that we are so aware of and so conscious of, is not something that is separate from love or separate from God, but it is one and the same. We need to elevate our thinking to this level if we're going to embrace the peace and the love and the joy and the happiness and the fulfillment and the contentment and the purpose and the function that we really are. It is a matter of recognition. It's not a matter of change. We can't make ourselves into our reality. We can't even change ourselves into our reality because our reality is changeless and unalterable. We remain as God created us. And so it's merely a recognition, enlightenment, awakening, the new birth, the discovery of self. It is merely a recognition, a shift in our awareness. We shift away from separation to the oneness that we share. It's just that easy. It doesn't take any external stimulation. It doesn't take any external change. It doesn't take any external approval. Who we are in reality is merely a thought away, a recognition away. And here at Truly Foundation, we serve that purpose. We hold up the light of our reality. We share every thought of God that has been shared with us. The peace that we are, we extend that. And these lessons serve as a pointer, as a signpost, as a reminder of who we are. Everything that we talk about here is already deposited in you. This is not anything new. There is nothing new under the sun. There's only love. And we are here as a voice and as a temporary guide and teacher and host to point you within. And when we say point you within, is that we are here to point you to your innermost being, your innermost self that transcends this body, that transcends this matter, this form, this world of form and matter. It transcends time. We are pointing you to your infinite, impersonal, and self-aware self that is already present. You're already aware of this. These are just reminders. The suffering is needless. Suffering is insanity. And most suffering and pain comes from a lack of awareness of our true identity, our true self. We have been conditioned. We have been programmed through many different means and ways in our life journey to the point where we found ourselves so prodigal, so far away from reality, so far away from home, so far away from our true identity, that we're now all on this journey of return. And we're finding out that on this return journey, that we're on a journey without a distance, because we realize that who we were, who we are, was always present. So this falling away only happened in our mind, only happened in our thinking, that affected our perception. And our perception affected our actions, and our actions affected our results. And so we have to go back to where we made the original error. The original error is not in the results. The original error is not in the action. The original error is not in the perception. But the original error was made when we entertained the idea of separation. When we engaged in the tiny mad idea that somehow, some way, that we could effectively separate ourselves from our source, separate ourselves from love, to separate ourselves from our creator, to separate ourselves from God. It's impossible. That's where the error was made. And so at that point, we also recognize that God gave us the answer to that tiny mad idea of separation at that very moment. But we weren't listening. And God said, there is no separation. God said, it's impossible for you to be without me. I am the source of your life. It's impossible for you to be separate from each other, because you are created. And you have my very nature, my very essence. You are a part of me. I'm not complete without you. And you don't exist without me. So we go back to the place where the error was made. And the Course here calls it the moment of atonement, where we accept the atonement, or like the word reads, at one ment, or the oneness, where we go back and say, no, separation is impossible. We are one. We accept the atonement for ourselves. It does this whole journey, this whole dream of pain and suffering and separation and destruction and sickness and disease and all the other false ideas that's been displayed through time and over time, as man has stumbled and groped in the darkness because he entertained the idea of separation. It all vanishes. It all disappears when we accept the atonement for ourselves, when we accept our original creation, when we know that we are sinless and guiltless, and that we are the holy home of God. We are the innocence of God. That's the only antidote. That's the only way out of this dream, this nightmare of being separate from God and each other. And so in this chapter 6, in the text on page 91, the title of this is called The Lesson of Love. And under the introduction, it talks about the fact that we all need a model. We all need an example. And Jesus is our model. Jesus is a great model. He's a way shower. If we look at his life, I'm not talking about looking at religion. I'm not talking about religion, because the words of Christ didn't speak of religion. It spoke of a reality. I'm not talking about the different religious practices that we choose, Buddhism and Christianity and Judaism and Shinto and all the different religions that are out here. They are just practices that we have chosen to engage ourselves with. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about your relationship with yourself and your relationship with your creator. It has nothing to do with any of those practices. It has nothing to do with this world and these practices that were developed and made in this world in time and space. We're going back before the foundation of the world. before all the labels, before all the practices, before all the man-made ways and the man-made ideas based on limited knowledge. No, we have grand revelation here in 2022 that goes beyond any religion. That's where we want to go. We want to deal with the cause, the source. We don't want to play panny Annie anymore. We see what that has gotten us. We see the world that we have created as a result of that. No, we're going back to the beginning, before the world was. We're going back to the moment of creation where God extended himself or herself or itself and looked at that extension and say, this is very good. This is the I am. This is who I am. This is all that I am. This is my creation. That's where we are. And we can go there. Why? Because we're infinite beings. We're eternal beings. We're not subject to the limitations of our bodies. We're not subject to the limitation of our thoughts, of our ideas, of our emotions, of our feelings, of our sensations, of our events, of our activities. We're not limited to we're not limited by our myopic view of ourselves. We're not limited by the conditionings of this world. We're not limited. We're not limited to the past experience that we've had. We're not limited by any illusion that would stand as a false image, that would stand as a false idea to keep us in the dark, to keep us behind the veil. We're going beyond that because we can. And so here it says in paragraph 2 under the introduction, I think this is very important here, very important. So that you don't think that what we're doing here is competing with religions. No, we're not. This is not A Course in Miracles is not a religion. It is exactly what it said. It is a course. It is a course for learning. We're learning how to how to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. And it's given us every thought of God. It's given us a practice. It's given us a way in which we can take these God thoughts, these God ideas, and practice them. And it's in our practice that we come to know that they are true. So this is beyond religion. We don't need another religion. We need the truth that transforms, the truth that sets us free. That's what we need. And that's what we are engaged in here. And so it says, and this is Jesus talking as the author of the course. He says, you have been asked to take me as your model for learning. Jesus said, you have been asked, you have been invited to take me as your model for learning. Who is your model for learning? What is your model for learning? We all have one. Whether you know it or not, we all have one. From the White House to the crack house, we all have some model that we are using for our learning. You cannot be here and not have a model. You cannot be here and not have an allegiance to something or someone or some idea. You cannot be here and not have a master. Jesus said, what? You can't serve two masters. So that means what? You have to serve one. So here he says, you have been asked to take me as your model for learning. Is Jesus, the man, your model for learning? And Jesus here is not saying you are that he's anything different from you. He said the only difference between you and I is that I have awakened fully and completely. I'm ego free. I'm 100% sold out to the truth and the truth only. That's what Jesus is saying as our brother. He said the difference between me and you is I'm 100% sold out. He said you're still dealing with what? You're still dealing with illusions. We're still what? Vacillating back and forth between what we believe, don't believe, what we have faith in, don't have faith in. And Jesus said, I'm here as your model for learning, to bring certainty and to bring stability into your life, to direct you and to point you to the mind that you need to operate with in order for you to experience your true identity, the real you, who is love. That's what Jesus is saying here. I like the way Jesus talks. He don't talk in religious terms. He is straightforward. And in this book, A Course in Miracles, he talks straightforward. You don't have to interpret what is being said. They're straightforward messages. So this is a gift to us. We don't worship any book. We don't worship any path. But we do embrace ideas of truth in whatever form that God gets them to us. And this is just one of many forms. It says, you have been invited to take me as your model for learning. Who is your model for learning? What is your model for learning? He says, since an extreme example is a particularly helpful learning device. So Jesus said that his life was an extreme example. And it's helpful for learning. What's the extreme experience that Jesus had? The life, the death, the birth, the life, the crucifixion, the death, the burial, the resurrection, the ascension. That's an extreme example. Do you know of anyone else that's been crucified? Do you know of anyone else that's been, that was raised from the dead and have ascended on high? Is there another model that you are aware of? But he said, don't get the message mixed up. He said, my crucifixion was not a message. He said, it's not a message of punishment. He said, the message of crucifixion is perfectly clear, even though it has been used indiscriminately to create a sense of judgment and fear and guilt in the minds of humanity. He said, but that's not the message. He said, the message of the crucifixion is perfectly clear. And that is, teach only love. For that is what you are. So the message of the crucifixion was never supposed to be used to give us the idea that there's a father, there's a creator that was angry and required punishment. That's not a loving father. But that's how we miscrewed the message. He said the message of the crucifixion was perfectly clear. He said that is that teach only love. For that is what you are. And so he said, I am that extreme example to help you learn. My life was a learning device. And so he says, everyone teaches. Notice now, Jesus said, everyone teaches. All humanity. Your life is a teaching device. We're all teaching something. What are you teaching? What is your life teaching? What is your life expressing? Is it expressing separation from God and from one another? Or is your life teaching oneness and equality? You are teaching something. Your life is teaching something. Your life is modeling some master. Every word, every action, every reaction is teaching your belief system to humanity. Are you teaching only love? For that is who we are in reality? Or are you teaching sin consciousness, guilt, and fear by your life? Are you teaching that God is loving? Or are you teaching that God is an unloving father by requiring punishment? Where did that idea come from? Are you teaching separation, that we're separate from God and each other? That there's inequality with God and us and each other? Or are you teaching equality? Your life is teaching something. But Jesus said that, hey, look, I am asking you to take me as your model for learning. One moment, please. All right. All right. What are you teaching? Who's your model? He says, everyone teaches and teaches all the time. This is a responsibility that each of us inevitably assume the moment that we accept any premise at all. The moment that we accept any idea as our own. It says, in that moment, we are accepting a responsibility in that moment. And this idea become a premise by which we live our life, by which we express ourselves. And in that living and in that expression, we become teachers. Our life is teaching something. Our life is modeling something. Are we teaching love only because that is our reality? Or are we teaching sin consciousness, guilt, and fear? Are we calling what God created something that is not? Are we putting heavy burdens and requirements on humanity that God does not require? Are we holding grievances? Are we applying labels? Are we seeing through our own made up labels? Are we holding people and oppressing people based on their physiological makeup, based on their gender, based on their political affiliation, based on their religious association, based on their the color of their skin, the race, the country, the nation? Are we judging and withholding our love from some? Do we see ourselves superior or inferior to others? If we are participating in this, we are teaching this. Our life is teaching this in every moment. And we wonder why so much suffering in the world. We're trying to make another truth that is not true. We're trying to take a false idea and make it truth. That is a heavy burden to carry. That is painful. It brings about suffering and depression and anxiety and fear and guilt and judgment. And that is not our purpose for being here. That is not our function. We have laid upon us a function that we can't carry. We have tried to live our life through a body identification. We think that we are this incarnated self that was birthed through our mother. That is not who we are. That is just a communication device for us to express the truth of who we are. Who we really are can only be defined by our Creator. And that is love. And so, he says, this is the responsibility that we inevitably assume the moment that we accept any premise at all. And no one can organize their life without some thought system. All of us are living through a thought system that we have embraced, that we have called our own. Is it the thought system of God? Is it the mind of Christ? Or is it the ego thought system that this world made up as a substitute to reality? Your self-image of yourself, your self-image of others, your self-image of God is coming from the premise, is coming from the thought system that you are operating from. Are you operating from the mind of Christ? Are you operating from the mind of love? Are you operating and directing your life from the mind of God? Look at our results. Look at our mindset. Look at our impact. Look at our experience. That is why we are in this session. That's why we're on this journey of transformation. Why? We want to embrace what? God's thought system. We want to have the mind of Christ, as the writer said. We want to what? Teach only love, for love is who we are, and love is who all humanity is. Lest we find ourselves challenging, fighting against the truth. That's why it's so painful. When we align with the truth of who we are, there is clarity, there is joy, there is peace, there is happiness, there is fulfillment, there is contentment, there is purpose, there is function, there's a unique expression that teaches only love. That's why we are here, to demonstrate to this world, this temporary world, that what is permanent is love, and love is all there is, and love shall prevail. And love is our master. And that we love love. We have no other master. We stop vacillating back and forth. We stop doubting our true identity, but we readily accept and welcome and embrace the oneness that we share with God and each other. So no one can organize their life without a thought system. All of us have one. We need to examine the thought system that we are following. Is it the thought system of love only? Is it the thought system of oneness? Or is it the ego thought system of separation? Kill or be killed. You look out in our world right now, we see so much what? So much suffering, so much disorder, so much dysfunction, so much pain. And we wonder, where is God? God is where you are. We wonder, where is love? Love is who you are. In many cases, we just don't recognize it because we have what? Placed up blocks and a veil between us and our true identity. We have been what? Deceived and conformed by this world to think that we're something that we're not, that we are these individuated, separated selves. And we have built systems based on that idea. And the systems are unstable. And a lot of these systems are falling apart. Why? Because they have their foundation in the ego belief in separation and not in the oneness. That we are. And so once you have developed a thought system of any kind, and you've developed one, I've developed one, and I know there was a point in my life where I did not like the thought system that I was operating in. It was filled with sin consciousness, guilt, and fear because I was conditioned by this world. But thank God for that moment, because like the prodigal son, I said to myself, there must be a better way. And I came to myself. And I sought the honor that comes from God only and not from this world. And it placed me on a journey. And I'm still on that journey with you and all humanity. And it's a journey without a distance, because I have realized now that what God created in all of us, it remains unchanged. We remain as God created us, as his very own self, as his I am. And so this journey now is about extending that I am, extending the love to all humanity, especially those that may still be asleep to their reality, that may still be suffering and heavy burden from sin consciousness, guilt, and fear. That is my purpose. That is all of our purpose now, to wake up and be the light of the world, to teach only love, to take Jesus as our model, as our example for learning. He's the way shower. He's our elder brother. He loves us. He's one with us. But it's our turn. It is your turn to say yes to your true identity. Yes to reality of your infinite and impersonal and self-aware self. And boldly declare that you remain as God created you, as sinless and guiltless and innocent and whole and complete. That you are the holy home of God. That you are the same holiness that God is. You share that holiness with him. The same joy, the same peace, the same happiness that God is. You share that joy and peace and happiness with him, or her, or it. Remember, God is not a gender. God is an idea. God is the only real idea. And we embrace that idea as our very own. It is a fact that we are an idea or an extension of God. That is the truth. That is true always. And as we embrace that as our very own, We are embracing the life of God, which we are, the love of God, which we share, the peace of God that we have all sought after. Once you have developed a thought system of any kind, you live by it and you teach it. What are you teaching? What are you living by? Who is your model? Who do you say that you are? Adam, where are you? Eve, where are you? God has been calling all of us from within to wake up to our true self, to wake up to the real you that loves you. Because the real you is love. And that cannot be changed. That cannot be altered. It can just what? You can just, and I can just fall asleep to it and say, no, I want to experience something else, like the prodigal son. You can say, no, I want to experience, life without God, like Adam and Eve did. And these are both just metaphoric stories to help us to wake up and make an irrevocable decision to embrace the truth of who we are. Because we made a decision to go on a journey. And it was painful. And it's scary. It carries with it a sense of lack. It carries with it a sense of beginning and ending, births and deaths. It carries with it a sense of scarcity and loss and separation and death. It's unstable. To think yourself separate from your creator is unstable. It's full of anxiety. And we have tried it and we don't like it. And so God has called all of us back home to return, like the prodigal son. To return to a father of love. God is waiting for you. So what? We can throw a party. We can celebrate your awakening. Today we celebrate your awakening. And we can do it today. Why? Because God guarantees that all humanity will eventually wake up to the truth of who they are. It will eventually happen. Love is not something to be defeated. Love is the only reality there is. Love is something not to be threatened or to be attacked. Love cannot be attacked. It can't be threatened. In our own human thinking, in our religious thinking, we thought Jesus was under attack. We thought Jesus was being threatened when he was in the process of crucifixion. And now we learn here from the Course that Jesus said, no. That was just an extreme example. Why? Because I wanted to be a model to show you that death is not real. I wanted to be a model to show you the power of forgiveness. I wanted to be a model to show you so you can learn the power of love. These are the message of my crucifixion. He said the message was what? Teach only love. He said, I was teaching only love. For that is who and that is what we all are, not just him. He said, this is what all of God's creation is, only love. And I took the most extreme route to demonstrate that love to you, to demonstrate the power of forgiveness to you. So that when you have your incarnation, when you are walking this journey, that you will have a model, an example, and a way to learn how to walk in the purpose of God and in the mind of Christ. So that you know that you are the real deal, that you know that you cannot be threatened, that you'll know that you cannot be attacked, that you know that you are invulnerable. You're not vulnerable to the limitations of this world. An attack on your body is not an attack on you. Why? Because you are not your body. That's just a device that you have to express yourself. Jesus said, "What? Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." They don't know that they are just like me, created in the image and likeness of you. They think that I'm a body, so they think that they're a body, so they think that I'm under attack. They're sad. They are disappointed. But I'm gonna teach this lesson that I'm not a body, that death is not real, that love is all there is. That is the true message of his crucifixion. But we taken it, and boy, you know what we've done with it. Create a sense of fear in people. Create a sense of inferiority and judgment in people. And it has created a thought system in people that is not accurate. All right, I keep getting some interruptive messages here about my streaming on Facebook. So if there's some technical things going on that is affecting your viewing this, this is kind of beyond my control here, but we're going to keep going. But this is being recorded also on YouTube, so you can go to YouTube, my YouTube channel, Truly Foundation, and watch this uninterrupted. So once you have developed a thought system of any kind, you live by it and you teach it. Your capacity for allegiance to a thought system may be misplaced. We may have misplaced our allegiance to a thought system that is not of God. We call it an ego thought system. And we may be teaching the opposite of love, which love has no opposite. So we may be teaching separation and hatred and vitriol. We may be teaching that there is a difference in humanity when there is none. We may be teaching that is inequality is right, that attack is justified. We may be teaching all these things. And we have misplaced our allegiance. We don't want to participate in teaching falsehood, or demonstrating falsehood, or modeling falsehood. Love is all there is. This is who we are. We want to teach only love. Jesus was our model for that. He said, but it is still a form of faith and can be redirected. We can redirect our thought system. We can have a shift in our thought system. We can lay down this thought system of separation. We can decide against the ego thought system of sin consciousness, guilt, and fear. We can decide and make another choice. We can choose again in any moment. And in this very moment, I invite you to choose only love, for this is who you are. And by the means of forgiveness, not only forgive yourself, but forgive your neighbor, forgive God, forgive this world. For choosing and expecting something that it cannot deliver on. And then we move on and become the light of the world in this moment. We make an irrevocable decision right now to choose only love, but that is who we are. And as we demonstrate and model love only in our relationships, as we demonstrate and model love only in every activity and event and sensation, every feeling and every encounter in our life, we begin to model and to teach only love. we become an effective model, an effective pointer, teacher, way shower. We become a signpost to the truth that is true always. We begin to understand our function in God's plan for salvation for all humanity by demonstrating and teaching and modeling only love. And we just walk away from all of our past. We walk away from all the anxiety of the future. We let go of all guilt. We let go of all consciousness of sin. We let go of all consciousness of fear. There is no fear in love. Why? Because fear has torment. There is no peace in guilt. Why? Guilt has judgment. There is no peace. There is no joy in sin consciousness. Sin consciousness is a false idea. You're not separate from God. You're not a sinner. You've never been one. There's no joy in that. There is no equality when we see ourselves as inferior to God and inferior to one another. All these ideas we embraced, we were conditioned by the world. And it imprisoned us. It kept us away from the happiness that we are. It is time. And there is no other time. There is no other moment. There's only the present moment. It is time to walk away from that false idea, from all the false ideas that the world has taught us. And now we look to the model of learning. Now we look to the truth that is true always concerning who we are. And we walk in the full glory of God, which we are. We walk with the honor that has been given unto us by God only. We remove ourselves from the honor of men. And we model the honor that comes from God only. This is our life. This is our purpose in life, regardless of where you are, regardless of what you're doing and who you're doing it with. You become the demonstration of love. Because this is who you are. This is where your happiness and your joy and your peace and your creativity and your prosperity. This is where it lies, because this is where God placed it, in you, in your nature, in your essence. This is your I am. I am love. Say it to yourself. I am love. I am loving. And I am lovable. Because this is who you are. And so to get to our lesson, wow. I went the long route to get to our lesson. So to get to our lesson in Workbook Lesson 246 in A Course in Miracles, it's going to make the lesson so easy now to just invite it in and welcome it and to practice it today. So to love our Father is to love His creation. It's to love all humanity. It's to love His Son. So let us not think that we can find the way to God. If we have hatred in our hearts, it says, don't even think about it, that you can find your way to God through hatred, that you can find your way to your own self through hatred. He said, it won't happen. It's impossible. We see a whole world out here that is operating through hatred and is suffering needlessly, trying to make the error real, trying to make the false real, trying to make inequality real, trying to make superiority real. When God said there's only one, all things are one. All things have been reconciled into the one, and there's no hatred in the oneness. And so when we operate from a place of hatred, where we see another human as less than ourselves, when we seek to oppress another, when we seek to see another separate and apart from their divine self, he said, this is hatred. This is what we're modeling. This is what we're teaching. He said, but don't think for any moment that you're going to find your way to love if you have hatred in your heart. It says, let us not try to hurt God's creation, God's son. Let us not try to hurt the sonship. Let us not try to hurt what God calls the Christ or the I am, which is all of us collectively. Because remember, in God, there is no separation. There's only one son. There's only one creation. There's only one God, and God is one with his creation. He said, when we don't think at this level, we'll open ourselves up for separation and division. And here it calls it hatred. It's merely where we are what? We are denying the truth. He says, so let us not try to hurt God's creation and think that we can know the Father or even our very own true self. He said it's impossible. He said you cannot hold one idea of hate, and know God or even know yourself. Why? Because God is only love. You are only love. And to give any credence to an idea of inequality or hatred, just one idea, to hold one person in contempt, to withhold your love from anyone. He said, if you do that, don't even think you can know love or you can know your very own self. He said it's impossible. You cannot have two masters. You're either all encompassing in this love that God is and who you are. If there's one exception, it is not the love of God. If there is one exception, it is not the love of God. This sounds hard, but it's not. This sounds liberating to me. This sounds freeing to me. This sounds like the freedom that we all desire. Freedom will never be legislated. The government can never make you free. A nation can never make you free. Freedom comes from the knowing of your true self. Freedom comes from the knowing that you are love only, and that is what you are. And you don't need anyone's permission to make that irrevocable decision to be the love that you are, and to now extend and to share that love with all creation. That's what love does. It shares, it extends, it gives what it is. And what love is, there is no opposite to love. There is no hate. So where is this coming from? It's coming from a thought or an idea that we were conformed to. But today we're being transformed by the renewing of love. where we come to love, where we come to love ourselves, to love God, to love humanity, all living things. It says, let me not fail to recognize myself. Let me not fail to recognize who I really am. Who do you say that you are? This is the question. It's a rhetorical question. Who do you say that you are? When our model, Jesus, was asked that question, he said, I am the Christ. Well, he didn't say it. Peter said it. You are the Christ. And Jesus said, flesh and blood didn't reveal that to you, but the Father, the love from heaven, revealed that to you because it's the truth. So when I ask you, who do you say that you are? The only real true response you can give is, I am the Christ. I am the creation of God. That's what Christ means. You are the creation of God. You are love. You are loving and lovable. This is your true identity. You are not a body. You are free. You remain the love that God created as you and as me. So we will not fail to recognize ourselves. Remember, we said enlightenment is but a recognition. It is not a change at all. It is but a recognition. And you recognize that you are the changeless one. You are the unaltered one. You are the express image of your Father. And you are one with your Father in all creation. That's the recognition. That is the enlightenment. It's just that simple. It's not complicated. We have complicated life. This ego thought system that has trained us has complicated life. And life is simple. Life is very simple. But we have complicated it. And it continues to get more complicated as we look out in the world and we see what the world continues to teach us and model for us. To keep us what? Confused. God has not given us the what? The spirit of confusion. It comes from the ego thought system. It comes from an allegiance to a thought system that is not of God. And so we fail not to recognize ourselves and still believe that our awareness can contain our Father, or our mind conceive of all the love our Father has for us and all the love which we return to Him. It is merely through recognition. Are you recognizing in this moment that you may have neglected your true self? You may have put a block up between you and reality by embracing the thought system of this world. And if you do realize that in this moment, and now recognize who you are, just make the shift in your thinking. Just that simple. You don't have to go to a building. You don't have to go to a man or a woman. You don't have to pay any money, or you don't have to do any of these religious things that religion would tell us. Well, you need to do this and that. No, you don't need to do anything but shift your perception and embrace your reality. And in this very moment, in this holy instant, you will recognize yourself. You will recognize your brother, your neighbor. You will recognize your creator. And in that recognition, you come to understand that there is the one life, the one love, the one being that we all share. There is but the one. And so whatever God is, I am. Whatever I am, my neighbor is. So all of this oneness that we swim in this ocean of love, it's like a bright light that puts out all the darkness. The darkness disappears. The hatred, the vitriol disappears. Even our bodies become a place and a function of healing. Our body begins to align itself with our true identity. All the thoughts and the vain imaginings begin to clear out. We begin to see clearly now that the rain is gone. Jesus said it this way. Jesus said it this way in Matthew. I'm opening up the scripture to help bring this point across. So in Matthew chapter 22, Jesus said this in verse 32. I am the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob. God is not the God of the dead, but of the living. So what he was saying there is that I'm the God of humanity. And what I am the God of is of the living. He says that no one that comes here and incarnate in a body, and the body is laid to rest, no one dies because they're not bodies. So he's not the God of the dead. He's the God of the living. So when you decide to lay your body down because your work is done, that is not death. Death doesn't exist in God. Death doesn't exist in love. He says he is still the God. He is still the master. He is still the loving Father of you because you are still among the living. You cannot die. You cannot be born. You cannot die. He proved that death is not real. So we need to remove that conditioning. We need to move that conforming idea from our minds about death. We no longer need to fear death. There is nothing to fear. Death is not real. He demonstrated that. He modeled that. He taught us that lesson. And he taught us that so that we would not walk in fear of death. There is no death in God. God is the God of the living. Verse 33. And when the multitude heard this, they was astonished at his teaching. Some of you are astonished at my teaching. But it's not my teaching. It is God's thoughts. It is God's idea. I'm just the messenger. But I know I say some things that are astonishing. I know I say some things that cut across what the world has taught us. I know I say some things here that cut across our religious traditions. But this is in no way to offend or to demean anyone. I am just here sharing the thoughts and the ideas as Jesus has placed here in the Course in Miracles. This is a course in a shift in perception. This is a course in healing. This is a course in forgiveness. This is a course in awakening. I'm just sharing the ideas. I have practiced the ideas and I know they to be true in my own life. So I'm sharing. I cannot do but share. So he said they was astonished at his teaching. They was astonished at the life that he was modeling. Some of us are astonished at the life that Jesus modeled. And Jesus said what? Follow me. Follow my example. So that you come to wake up to your true reality. So everything that was applicable to Jesus is applicable to you because Jesus is a son. Jesus is a creation of God, just like you are. He's no special one, as we have tried to make him that. Jesus said, the only difference between me and you is I'm your elder brother. I was the first one to awake. He said, I'm devoted to the truth. He said, that's the only difference. I'm a devoted elder brother. Follow my model, follow my learning. And that his life was not a religion. But people have taken his life and made religions out of it. And it has made a mess. Established a whole establishment that has made a mess that looks really weak right now. But he said, model my life. But when the Pharisees, when the religious folks, when the Pharisees had heard that he had put the Sadducees, they were sad, you see. Most religious people are sad, you see. He said when he had put them to silence, they were gathered together. They gathered together to say, figure out what we're going to do with this dude. He ain't conforming to us. He's threatening our system. He's threatening our income. He's threatening our magic. He's just threatening our institution. What are we going to do with him? It says, but the Pharisees had heard that he had put the Sadducees to silence. They were gathered together. Then one of them, notice now, here's the leader, the reigning leader. He says, then one of them, which was a lawyer. See, he had been educated. He knew how to form the questions. He knew how to get people out of things. He knew how to work the system. So he says, then one of them, which was a lawyer, asked Jesus a question, tempting him and saying, so his question was to tempt Jesus to stumble over his own belief. That was the purpose. So that's what lawyers, they're good lawyers. But, lawyers are lawyers. I mean, that's the business. And they're designed to help people get out of what? Their mess. And so they'll use any method or means legally to do that, even though they know that, the person, created a mess. So in verse 36, the lawyer asked Jesus, our brother. He says, Master. They had recognized Jesus as a master. And now, this guy is a master of life here. It says, Master, which is the great commandment in the law? So they try to trick him to get him to say, to say something that they could come back later and hold him account for it. So the question was, which is the great commandment in the law? They was asking him to say, what is the one great commandment? He said that law had thousands and thousands of commandments and ordinances. He said, but which one is the great one? They asked him the question. And this is really good for what we're talking about here today. Jesus answered and said unto the lawyer and to all the Pharisees and Sadducees and everyone else that was looking. He said, this is it. He said, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy mind, and with all thy soul, or with all thy soul and all thy mind. He said, this is the great commandment, that we should love the Lord. We should love God. We should love the Father. We should love the Creator with all our heart and with all our soul and with all our mind. He said, this is the first. He didn't say this is the one. He said this is the first. He's wise, man. He didn't get tricked. He didn't say this is the one commandment. He said this is the first. He said this is the first and great commandment. This is the first and great. This is the most important thing that one should do, is to love God with all, no exception, all their soul, all their heart, all their might, all their mind, that we should play full out with God, that our allegiance should be to God only. This is what he was saying. That our thoughts and our ideas and our purpose and our functions should be an allegiance to God only, or to love only. We should love, is what he's saying. We should love. And our allegiance should be love, because this is who we are. That was his answer. He said, this is the first one. And he says the only one. He said, this is the first commandment. This is the first reality. He said, and the second is like unto the first. He said, the second is like unto the first. So he didn't narrow it to one. He said, this is the first and this is the second. They said, which one? He said, this is the first, this is the second. He said, this is the first and the great commandment. And the second is like unto the first, that thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. So loving God and loving your neighbor. Who is your neighbor? All God's creation. Who is your neighbor? All humanity. Who is your neighbor? All living things. He said you should love God, and you should love all humanity as your very own self. Why? Because your humanity is yourself. That humanity is yourself. Your neighbor is yourself. There is no separation. There's only one of us. The bodies don't separate. Body separation don't separate us. We are one in God. We are one in spirit. We are one in mind. We are one in love. This transcends our body identification. This transcends the birth of a body. He is talking from a place of eternity, from a place of creation, where he knows that there's only one, that God is all there is. And God created and extended himself and called that his neighbor, his son, his creation. And he said, if you are going to live and walk and experience the truth of who you are, he said, love God and love your neighbor as yourself. Because to love your neighbor is to love yourself. To love your neighbor is to love God. To love God is to love your neighbor. To love yourself is to love your neighbor. We're all one. There's one love. And we filter that. We take that reality and we hold it up against what we may be seeing in our very own lives, in our very own communities, in our very own location, in our very own country, in our very own world. And we lay what we see happening in the world against this, what he called the first and second most important reality, and that is love. And we see why the world is struggling, why the world is in self-destruction mode, why the world is suffering mentally and emotionally. We see the destruction that humanity is having among its own self. It doesn't line up anywhere near this reality, these laws. And we know what the problem is: a lack of love, a lack of recognition that one is love, that their neighbor is love, that all humanity is love. Love is all that there is. Love is the answer to the world's problem. Love is the answer to your relationship. Love is the answer to your idea of scarcity and lack. Love is the answer to your feeling of inferiority. Love is the answer to your sense of not having self-worth. Love is the answer to your low self-image of yourself. Love is the answer to everything. I know they say money answers everything, but it is not true. Love answers everything. He says, on these two principles, on these two commandments, on these two principles, hang all the law and all the prophets. He said, when we embrace these two realities of loving God and loving each other, he said, all of the principles, all of the universe hangs on this love. It is this love that sustains all of us. And so now I can finish workbook lesson 246. I think I made my point. I will accept the way you choose for me to come to you. What is that way? That way is love. Remember, we said that let me not think that I can find my way to God if I hold hatred in my heart. Don't think you can get there. If you try to hurt God's creation, don't think that you even have an awareness of who God is or who yourself is. He say, but today we accept the way that you choose, that the Father, the loving Creator choose for us to come to Him or to her or to it, to come to our Father. We accept God's way. We accept God's what? Thought system. We accept God's model. We accept God's learning. Love is the way. Because this is who we are. For in that we can only succeed. We can only achieve. In love. It's the only way to true success. It's in love. In loving God and loving one another. It's loving ourselves. Self-love is a huge block in this world. It's a huge block. People are suffering deeply from self-love, from a self-image of themselves. Why? Because of the conformity to this world. But here today, we're no longer being conformed to this world, but we're being transformed by the renewing of our mind in love, embracing the reality that we will teach only love because this is who we are. So we lay down our weapons. We lay down our plowshares. We lay down our anger that is no longer justified. We lay down our fears. We lay down our guilt. We lay down this low, inferior self-esteem that we have about ourselves. We lay down the perceptions that we have about our neighbors. We lay down the guilt and the judgment that we have held and placed between us and our reality. And we stand in this freedom, in this liberation, in this liberality that we have found in love, that we have discovered that this is who we are, this is what we are, and this is why we are. And now we go and we share that love with all humanity. Hallelujah. For in that we will succeed, because it is God's will. What? That we succeed. It is God's will that we be happy. It is God's will that we be at peace. It is God's will that we walk in abundance. It is God's will that we walk in happiness. It is God's will that we share this love with all humanity. It is the will of God that all humanity wake up to the awareness of their true identity. And like Jesus said, not my will, but thy will be done on earth as it is, well, in the heavenly places. Where is the heavenly places? Your true identity, your true awareness. It is in the pure presence that we all stand in this moment. Some are aware and some are not. So until all are aware, we stand here as the light of the world. We stand here as a symbol of forgiveness. We stand here not as with a message of punishment and judgment, but we stand here as a message of love only. So it is the will of God. It is my will. It is your will. God wills our happiness only. And it's only going to come through us embracing our reality, our oneness with the Father and each other. And to love God with all, because God gave us all. And to love each other with all, because God gave us all. It's within us. It's within our nature. We can do this. We can be this. And it starts with a decision. It starts with a choice. We choose again. Father, we choose your love and your love only. Say it to yourself if you really mean it. To say it is one thing, but to really mean it is another. To say, I want the love of God, I want to experience my true self is one thing, but to truly mean it is another. And I will recognize that what our Father will is what I will as well. That's what Jesus, again, modeling this for us. He said, I only do the will of my Father. That's the model of everyone's life that would bring about the glory that we are. To say, not my will, but thy will be done. Not my will be done. Not the will of the ego thought system, but the will of the thought system of God, which is oneness, which is loveness. Loveness. Oh, I like that. Oneness and loveness. Peaceness, joyness, happiness. I got it. And only that. Only the will of God. And only that. Only love and only that. Love only. Love beauty. All this brings out of you a radiant aliveness that you would say, wow, I didn't know I was this. And you are. You are more than this. There is no end to your thisness. There's no end to your loveliness. There's no end to your beauty. There's no end to your radiant aliveness. I'm here to tell you. And so, to conclude this, and so I choose to love all creation, all my neighbors, all my families, all my sacred friends, even those, like Jesus said, that think that they're enemies. There is no enemy. He said, but if one think that they're an enemy, he said, I love them too. But there is no enemy. The only enemy is the inner, I-N-N-E-R, inner me that is one with God. And God is not an enemy. In fact, God said, I am your friend. Are you a friend of God? Of course you are. Are you a child of God? Of course you are. Are you a creation of God? Of course you are. Are you the love of God? Of course, this is who you are. Embrace it. Embrace it. Embody it, share it, extend it. Freely you have received, freely give it without any reservations. Withhold your love from no one. Withhold your equality from no one. Love them as you love God and love yourself so that you will know yourself. You cannot know yourself if you don't love God in his creation, all of it, no exception. There's not one exception. One exception would throw you for a curve. You know what I'm talking about. One person that you're holding at bay, one person that you're withholding your love, it will throw you all out to kilter. Your thinking, your feelings, your emotions will get thrown all out to kilter because you're withholding. You're covering the light of the love that's in you. So release it all. Today, we let it all go. And we are love only. We teach only love. You getting the drift here? Your life is a demonstration of love only. Doesn't matter what has happened in the past. Doesn't matter. It does not matter. The past doesn't exist. The future we can't live into. We can only love right here in this present. Love is only present in this moment. And that is who we are. And so we choose to love all God's creation. And so it is. Remember, this is our practice today. Is to love our Father. Our Father is to love his creation, all of his creation. That's what we practice today. Selah. Until tomorrow. Bye-bye.